Okay. So from Superior now, your coaching career takes you where? What happened after Superior, Wisconsin?
Well, from there, it was a one-year job because of the troops being sent to Korea, and then the coach came back, and so I had to find something else. And so there was a job opening at New Richmond, Wisconsin, and so I applied for that and got the job and went down there and we were there for 2 years. And then I was up finishing my master's degree in Superior that summer, and I had a couple of board members come over to the house and said, well, Ken Anderson at Superior Central is resigning. And that was my home school, and growing up, I always wanted to be a Superior Central Viking, and they wanted to know if I wanted the job. Well, I had a team at New Richmond. We were 16-4. I had 10 kids coming back.
Good nucleus.
And plus, it was about $1,000 more. And I said, well...
Which is a lot of money back then.
You bet. I said, thank you very much, but I appreciate the offer, but I can't. And I said, I got my degree this summer, and I'll be moving on. And they came over a couple more times. And the thing was that they were going to open a new high school in Superior the next year. And so we're closing Central. And so there was no realization that you would get the job either. So with that in mind, I said no. Then they came back a couple more times. And finally I said, okay. And so I coached football and basketball there. And we ended up having a good season. And I didn't get the job. And the guy who got the job was a kid I played college basketball with, a very, very good friend of mine. And he, well, I don't know if it's political or not, but we didn't get it, and I didn't feel very, we're still very good friends with him. But so we stayed, what am I going to do? And meanwhile, I'd come back from the state tournament in Minnesota. I looked for some jobs down here.
Okay.
Had applied at Anoka. Glenn Reed called and said there was a job opening in Anoka. So come on down and interview. So I went down and interviewed, and after the basketball season, I was playing basketball, tore my Achilles tendon. So I had my leg in a cast for most of the spring, and I went summer school and working on my next degree after master's. So I went down for an interview in Anoka and said, well, the board's going to meet in about 3 weeks, but I said, well, what do I do? I'm going to a job. I was offered a job.
Sure.
I was a head baseball coach and teacher. And I said, I'm going to resign that, and I'm not going to stay with that. Well, they said, we'll let you know in about 3 weeks, and that shouldn't be any problem. Your job is yours. So I waited 3 weeks, I don't hear. Then finally I gave him a call, and he said, well, I meant to call you with his hometown boy, and he wanted the job back, and we gave it back to him. I said, well, what do I do? He said, well, we got a junior high principal just fell off a ladder and broke his neck, so we got to hire somebody there. And we got an 8th grade American history job open. So I took that job.
Okay.
And then when I got down to Anoka, there was kind of some sad times leaving that and the condition it was and everything. Well, then there was I played in the state softball tournament that year, and it was held in Bloomington. And D.L. Smith was the coach at Kennedy at that time. And he said, I'm going to lose my assistant, Steve Stroman, being drafted. He said, would you like to come and work with me? And I said, well, I'd love to. Get into Bloomington schools. And so I wait, I don't hear anything from him. And finally I do hear that D.L. Smith got himself in some trouble, and he gets fired, and Steve gets drafted, so they offer me an assistant's job there.
Okay.
And so I take that. And when I interviewed, Don Snyder said, well, looking at your credentials and that, we've got a new school coming up in 3 years, Jefferson, and he said, we'll give you every opportunity to get the job. Well, that was fine. I had 2 young kids and had no job, getting a job, and I loved Kennedy. It was a great job. So that was the beginning there, and so that's how I got to Bloomington.
And what year was that?
1966.
Okay, 66. And so you were commuting from Anoka down to Bloomington.
Through all the snowstorms and everything. We were up about 5 in the morning, And you know how wives are, and you have a wife that's involved in coaching. I have greater respect for wives.
Yes.
Always have. But my wife with 2 young boys, and I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'd go and coach and teach, and we would have games and practice the next day. So I'd home at maybe 11:30, long days, and always cheerful. So, but that was some tough time.
Yeah, and you know, we really understand how much the wives are part of the fabric of your coaching too. And your teaching too, you said American history. Did you teach American history throughout your entire career, or were there other
I had
classes?
a couple of years where I had to have a Phi-Ed minor and a major too, but I enjoyed American history, and I did pretty much all throughout my career. Whenever there was we have visitation days. Even my last year at Jefferson, I would take a visitation day, and I knew some people that were very good American history people, and so I would go and visit them. Just like when you're coaching, you know, you're coaching, you scout somebody, they're doing something pretty nice. I thought, boy, if I can make my American history program better, I'll do that, as we always did with coaching basketball.
Great. And so you're at Kennedy now, and you were an assistant at Kennedy, but weren't you the assistant to Coach Strawman then at that time?
He had been drafted in the
Okay.
Air Force. He was gone.
Oh, he was gone. So who was the head coach then?
Bruce Clausen.
Okay.
He had been a sophomore assistant. But I did work with Buster Rodebach in baseball
Okay.
and enjoyed that. And Buster, you know, what a
And
person he is.
he had immense success with the baseball program
Yeah.
over there. He always, his kids were,
Enthusiastic and
always played
a
very
good
hard.
program.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to Jefferson in the 70-71 year, what were some cornerstones of your philosophy of working with kids, developing them not only on the basketball court, but as people? I know there's one common theme that I've seen working with your son Jeff over the years, is that effort and hard work are very, very important. But there's that one phrase you guys always had on the bottom of the board before we went out on the floor. You want to tell everyone what that is? It hasn't changed. What's the last thing? Do you remember the last thing you used to tell everybody?
I don't know.
Have fun?
Oh, have fun. Well, I guess,
Yeah.
that was the philosophy behind it, is have fun.
Yeah.
And I guess I've always enjoyed kids, and I work with good and bad kids. And in the American History program, I always volunteered through this, what they call it, skills group. Kids that have a little more trouble, and you had to be a little more patient with them. I had some friends of mine that I grew up with that had those kinds of problems, and I sympathized with them. And so I always, like I say, volunteered for those kind of people.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we're moving on over to the basketball part of Bloomington Jefferson. So the 1971 or 70-71 season comes, and you were talking about the facility and some of the obstacles you had with practice and stuff. But it's your first year as a head coach at Jefferson, and why don't you take us through that?
All right. As I've gone through other coaches, things that made coaching successful. Why did they have a good record? What did they do? Well, they had a good reputation. We didn't have a reputation here. We were just
Right.
starting out.
Right.
So I go to coaching clinics every summer. In 4 years, I went to Paducah as our family vacation, and
That'd be Kentucky, right?
Kentucky.
Yep.
And there were coaches from all the South and all over, and not everybody that went to the coaching clinic in Minneapolis went there. So I had different philosophies. What made your program successful? What did you do? What kind of gimmicks did you have? What did you do to get enthusiasm in the community? And so I tried to do all those things that I could, bring them back here. And print up the little bulletins, little workout cards and various things, and see people in the community to try to support, just to get the program on the map. And so we tried all kinds of things like that. Every year was something different. But finally, we were fortunate enough well, our first year was not very good because we didn't have a gym until February 14th. And so we practiced at Kennedy, we practiced at Normandale, we practiced at Olson Junior High at 5:30 in the morning.
I was going to say, but the times were pretty.
Oh, and we got a lot of ankle sprains, stuff like that, colds and everything. Long days, and kids go back to classroom. And finally, February 14th, I come down to the gym every day. They put the floor down, and they put 27 boards a day, no more, no less. And the next day was the same thing. Finally, February 14th, we had our first home game. No bleachers on one side, bleacher on one side only, but it was a home game. And so we didn't know how to take that. And I don't remember the score of that game. It was just easier traveling, no bus and everything. But that was the first, and we had some nice kids. And we lost D.A. Anderson, which was going to be the best basketball player we had. We lost him in the next to last football game, the torn knee, and he didn't play at all the whole year. And we had Dustin Hoffman, we had Kurt Olson, we had Tom Rude, and some others. That
Sure.
Good players, but all operating under the same circumstances. We had tired, long days, and so forth. And then we lose Kurt Olson in the regional first game with a torn knee.
It was a tough year.
Yeah, so it was.
So were your games then at Kennedy then too, at Normandale?
We played at both Kennedy and Normandale.
For your games that weren't here? Wow.
So that was your home game. And
Well, bringing up Normandale, that brings me to another direction. I just wanted to ask you about it because Ron Levency was the head coach there for years and years and years, and you guys were neighbors.
Next door neighbors, 25 years.
And so, what was your guys' relationship like?
Oh, very good, very good. In fact, I used to go to Eau Claire for 15 summers to work basketball camps. And Woody Johnson and I would go over there, and they would work. We didn't have basketball camps in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And we'd see 1,000 kids a summer there.
Wow.
And they're working out in the different programs that, Flip Saunders brought in, we'd see that every time. And we'd come home and say, God, that'd be great if we had something like that going. And so finally, when we broke through and had summer camps, and I helped Ron start one at Normandale, and then we got one going here. And then, I don't know, Jefferson must be about 38th year, I think we've had it here. And so we just introduced kids to the game of basketball.
Okay.
And
I do recall going to Ron's summer camps and also his open gyms. And quite a few of your players would go over there and scrimmage against the college guys. It was a great atmosphere. So in 70, 71, you had one person you said that was probably one of your best shooters ever, Dan Hoffman. Do you want to talk a little bit about him at all?
Well, very, very. I see him. He wasn't maybe 5'10", maybe, and strong, very strong. He would shoot jump shots, like three-pointer jump shots, and I don't know what percentage of the points he made on long shots, but very good long. And it would be three-pointers today, and the number of points that he scored would have been elevated much more with the three-pointer. But very good competitor, and. Was a good start for a new school.
You said that his effort, he was like effortless on his jump shot. He just
never went out of energy, working all the time, and he's always putting out effort. And hey, he was a good leader because the rest of them followed along with it. So.
And then in 1971-72, it was my first introduction to Jefferson. I was probably about 7 years old, and my brother was the captain at Edina, and we came over here for a game. And Jefferson made an impression on my mom that she always used to talk about. She would say that, watch out because they do things right. And I think what she meant by that was it was the team play. Everything just seemed to work real well together. And then, of course, another thing she always noticed was about your demeanor, about how calm you were. You were never a rant and raver or screamer, but how did you get your message across?
Practices. I love practices, and I'd rather practice than a lot of games, but that's what you teach. You're a teacher, you're hired as a teacher. And if I'm ranting and raving and screaming, how am I, they're going to get the message across to them?
Right.
So I let somebody else do that.
So between say 72 and 74, are there anything within those years that stand out to you?
Well, I think probably our program started to take hold a little bit. We had a gym, we had a place to go. We got a few wins under our belt, and then they started to believe a little bit in what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would try to do summer programs to build some interest year round, and not like AAU, but I mean, you think basketball. I always like my athletes, if they're football, basketball, baseball, whatever is in season, that's what you play. That's what I don't like about AAU programs. They make them decide early. And so we would try to, I set up some off-season programs for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had junior highs, Lloyd Home in St. Louis Park, and we organized junior high traveling league in the summertime.
Okay.
We probably play about 10 games. And every Thursday we'd go to a different gym.
Okay.
And so the junior high kids.
And this is the summer you're talking about, right?
In the summertime.
And so how much contact time did you have? You didn't have any contact time with your varsity athletes at that time, did you?
No.
None whatsoever?
No.
Okay. But it was the junior high kids where you guys were developing that.
Right.
Okay.
They're trying to build a program. Anything you do to make another step, and so they wanted to become a Jaguar.
And so as far as the kids developing at that time, during the season, did they have traveling at that time? Was it just BAA? What did the kids do in the winter as far as basketball went in the 70s, early 70s?
Well, it was BAA, but traveling league. I started the traveling league in the metro area with a friend of mine from Fridley,
Okay.
from Superior.
Okay.
Bob Olson. He played at the University of Minnesota, and he had a boy, and I had. Jeff was coming to that age, so we started a traveling league. We got about 10 or 12 games, and I'd give up a Saturday whenever we had home games, and we charged $5, $5 for we pay referees, and we had about a 12-game schedule.
Okay.
Just the beginning to try to get something to carry on.
Okay. And so as we're moving through the early 70s here, we talked about the state tournament at that time. The state tournament was just one state champion. And so your first year, 74, 75, was a very, very successful and powerful team that you had. And you guys did eventually get to the state tournament that year, but you had mentioned that might have been one of your best teams ever.
I think we were. We had the next year team won the state championship, but they were being pushed by these kids that were juniors.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to get over that hump. And we lost to Robbins there on a last second shot, a long shot. And who knows what would have happened had we won there. But getting that next step is difficult.
Who were some members of the 74, 75 team that
Well, you had Larry Winham.
Okay.
You had Tom Mundy. Trying to think of a couple of big kids. Tom Crochelle.
Okay, there you go.
So we had some good feeders.
And was Tom a senior that year then?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Neighbor across the street, I think of his name now. Anyhow, Greg Peterson was one of the guards.
Okay. Yeah, because the Rudes. Okay, we got a break.
Yeah, second break.
Okay. All right. I'll kind of